content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some viewers and listeners. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast does not intend to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior in the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, respect for the victims and their families. Have you ever heard of a chemistry genius that used his talents as an artisan narcotic cook, whipping up the most addictive drug on the planet? No, I'm not talking about Breaking Bad here. But our criminal tonight has been compared to the infamous Walter White. We're talking about George Squeak Marquardt, a high school dropout and self-taught chemistry genius because of the professional and criminal age at 12 and continued his drug manufacturing for the next 60 years. So grab your chemistry sets and your safety goggles, kids. It's going to get trippy on this ride. It's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. I am your host, Winnie Schrader. And tonight I wanted to delve into a topic which we have touched before on the show, but it's something that is just a pressing issue of our time, and that's the opioid crisis. Now, our guest tonight, John Madinger, a veteran in the field of drug and law enforcement, serving as a sheriff's deputy and narcotics agent and a special agent with the U.S. Department of Treasury, and an accomplished author. His latest book, Lethal Doses, behind-scenes story of the Godfather of Fentanyl, pulls back the curtain on that shadowy world of synthetic opioids and the puppet master who controlled it. This is not just a crime story. It's a chilling exploration on the deadly intersection between greed, power, and addiction. Welcome to the show, John.
Well, thanks for having me on, Winnie.
Okay, well, the reason why I wanted you on, because this is such a timely issue as much as it is terrifying. The fentanyl crisis, the opioid, you have Oxycontin here, you got fentanyl here. Now they get cutting fentanyl with Oxycontin and people are dying all over the place. Now, Minnesota was put on the map because Prince was found dead in his elevator from a fentanyl overdose. Now, he got his fentanyl through a prescription. Now, the guy that we're talking about here is Erik Squeak Marquardt. Now, how does he fit in with the pharmaceutical fentanyl?
Well, pharmaceutical fentanyl was first developed in 1959, 1960 by a Belgian drug manufacturer, Paul Janssen Pharmaceutica. And it was developed as an anesthetic to be used in surgery.
Okay.
It took a little while to catch on here in the United States, but by the 1980s, it was being used in 80% of surgeries. And most medical professionals say that modern heart procedures, in particular, wouldn't be possible without fentanyl. So,
okay.
I mean, it's a very valuable drug. It's on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines. Very, very important for medical and surgery practices.
Oh, yes. I do know what, with all my health ailments that are, my listeners know, I'm just falling apart. I'm a jalopy. But the the pain management. That is a key to recovery. However, I don't think it's monitored as much as it should be. It seems to me now like almost every person that comes out of surgery probably has an 85% chance of becoming addicted to painkillers. And that's sad. And so with the fentanyl that came from the pharmaceutical world has always been kind of the safe, regulated drug. So where does the George fit into this, and how did he become the godfather of fentanyl? Are we talking about the same fentanyl here?
Well, we are. Yeah, it's the same molecule. It's a drug that's essentially extremely powerful. It's about 40 to 50 times more powerful than heroin. They say about 80 to 100 times more powerful than morphine. It's extremely potent. It has a fairly short acting, effect. It has a pretty quick recovery time for surgery patients. Come out of it pretty quickly. They go under pretty quick, and then they come out of it fairly quickly, which is nice for surgery. Not so handy for addiction purposes because, drug users tend to want a longer high. They want to be able to get, more bang for the buck. But the attraction for the drug traffickers is that you can cut their regular stuff, heroin or oxycodone or some other narcotic, with fentanyl. A little bit of fentanyl will go an awful long way toward improving your product. So, so that's the appeal for the traffickers in the black market. Mr. Marquardt, Erik Squeak, he was a chemist. He's originally from Wisconsin, originally from Waukesha, Wisconsin. And he was a high school dropout. He was actually expelled from high school for truancy on the same day that he won the Wisconsin State Science Fair. So he's like a very talented chemist, natural abilities in that area. And he had very early, he broke bad. He became a criminal. He very, very early in his life, at 14, he actually manufactured heroin in a closed up morgue in Waukesha. And he was, by the time he was 18 or 19, he was making hallucinogens. Now, this is in roughly 1960 to 64. So this is a long time back. And a lot of those drugs at the time weren't even illegal. For instance, the LSD wasn't illegal in the state until the mid 60s. So he was fascinated by the appeal of these things. Now, of course, in the 60s, there was a huge market for that. So he took advantage of that and eventually graduated toward fentanyl. And that's the story in the book, is how he got into the fentanyl business and was able to manufacture it and get it out, distribute it for the first time in the United States in the early 1990s.
Okay, well, so tell us about that. Like, it's the early 1990s. He's like, I'm just going to start my own fentanyl manufacturing business underground. So what was kind of his structure in the beginning? Like, what was he like? Was he just trying to build this little empire?
I first met him in 1976. He was, at the time I met him, I was a narcotics agent with the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, and he was an informant for us. He was providing us with information about another clandestine chemist, his former partner. And I met him that way, and he worked with us for, maybe a year, and then disappeared on us and went up to the Pacific Northwest and set up a bunch of labs up there, and then eventually came back to Oklahoma, and our agency, OBN, busted him in a lab in Beggs, Oklahoma in January of 78. Okay. So when he was convicted, he was charged and convicted with manufacturing methamphetamine, because Oklahoma had a meth market. They had a lot of people that wanted meth. It was cheaper high than cocaine, so it was popular here at the time. And we got him for manufacturing meth and sent him to federal prison. It wasn't actually until he got to federal prison at Lewisburg in Pennsylvania where he hooked up with he actually hooked up with the biggest heroin dealer in the United States, a guy by the name of Louis Cirillo out of New York, who was at one point, the feds believed that he was responsible for a fifth or sixth of all the heroin traffic in the United States. So big, major narcotics trafficker. And Louis came to him one day and said, I got this magazine article, Newsweek article, and can you tell me if this is like real? If this is something that's really real? And it was an article about fentanyl. And it's, it said what the article said is that you could make this stuff fairly cheaply and make a lot of money from it. And from Cirillo's standpoint, that's really attractive because he's looking at it as somebody that's part of the heroin business, which is, involves opium farms in faraway places and smuggling across borders and laboratories in other places. And and so you could cut all that out by just going and manufacturing this fentanyl. So he's asking him, is this possible and can you do it? And Marquardt's answer was, yeah, I can do it. So that's how he got into the fentanyl business. It took a while for that to happen. It took him basically until about 1989. This conversation with Cirillo happened in like 81 or 82. But in 1989, he was setting up a lab in Wichita, Kansas to manufacture fentanyl.
Oh, okay. Now, was the Cirillo character, did he finance all that stuff for him, or was he kind of it took him long because he had to do everything on his own?
Squeak was very nervous about Mr. Cirillo. Cirillo had a bad reputation. He was a killer, and he had already put out contracts. It was pretty well known that he put out contracts on his associates that were testifying against him in the narcotics cases in New York. So he was really reluctant to do that. So he got another friend at the prison there to kind of get him out of Cirillo's orbit. Problem is that he hooked him up with another inmate, guy by the name of Joseph Martier, and Martier was there for manufacturing PCP. And so the two of them hooked up, and they're the ones that actually put the fentanyl conspiracy together at Lewisburg, and then subsequently.
So they cooked this all up in prison?
Basically? He said, yeah, I was a chemist before, but I had to go to prison to meet a gangster. So, that was one of the things that we talked about a lot was, the fact that you had to hook up with crooks. And this is the place to do it, and so, and that's what happened in this case.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me to know that people, like methamphetamine, for example, why would somebody think to put battery acid and Drano and all these chemicals together to create this drug that is so powerful? It's baffling to me, how he could just figure out the fentanyl formula basically and just make it. That is so crazy to me, and knowing that this is happening is really, really scary to me, because it's you never know what kind of drugs are out there. And from one thing that I do know now is the reason why they've been cutting a lot of stuff with fentanyl is because like you said, it gives them that euphoric high, but it's such a powerful high that a lot of people die from. And that's what the dealers want. Because the addicts, they want that killer high, I guess you would call it. And
he was actually very talented. He had the ability to make this stuff from almost anything. One of the agents said that he could make meth out of the dirt from your pockets. And that's
Wow.
not far off. He had a lot of chemical talent. And so he was, meth was one of his things. And he actually came up with formulas that DEA didn't even know about for manufacturing meth. So, and when he was telling them to us in 70, 76, 77, I was like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it does sound like they literally took the script of his life and put it in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what Walter White did. He created this.
People compare him to Walter White, but there's no comparison. He was far more talented and diverse than Walter White. You know, I want to make, I don't want to, like you said at the beginning, you don't want to glorify people, but I mean, this guy had undeniable ability. And
Right.
And he like Walter White just stuck with meth, and that was his thing. You know, he had his formula, and he stuck with it, and that was the theme of the show. This guy could do anything. I mean, and he did. He made any drug that he could get paid for. He would manufacture it. He was not shy about saying that either.
Yeah, and it's sad because his talents could have been used for the good. You know what I mean? He could have used that.
They could have been at one point in the 80s when he got out of Lewisburg and came back to Oklahoma. He was looking around for something to do, and at the time he was making meth precursors, the chemicals that you need to manufacture meth. He was making those so that the other chemists that he was selling them to, wouldn't have to buy them from a place where DEA was watching or OBN was watching. So that was the kind of thing in the 80s. But he got a sample of AZT, the medication for AIDS patients at the time, that was brand new. And he got a sample of that, had it analyzed on a mass spectrometer. And from that, he was able to manufacture AZT and sell that to people that needed it. So yeah, he was capable of doing that, and he did do it. But, he always came back to manufacturing bad stuff.
I know. He was probably just an adrenaline junkie and loved the rush of it or something. Because, like, for me, if I was and that's the thing, and kind of the whole atmosphere of being the chemist, the cook for this drug and stuff like that. But it's like, why couldn't he have gone into a lab and came up with a drug to cure cancer? You know what I mean?
He was trying. He was trying to do that at the very end. Yeah. Yeah, he was trying to do that with Taxol. I don't know if you heard of that, but it's a cancer drug that was in the late 80s, early 90s. It was looked at as a real miraculous miracle cure kind of for cancer, breast cancer especially. And the problem with it was that it was manufactured from these trees in the Pacific Northwest, and there weren't very many of them, and you had to kill a lot of trees in order to get this stuff. So science was looking for a total synthesis, where you could make that molecule out of just chemicals, unlimited supply. And he was looking at that. He was really wanted to do that. And it wasn't for the money. He wanted although that was nice, he wanted the challenge of it more than anything else. And that was the thing with fentanyl. Fentanyl has what they call analogs. I'm not sure if listeners are familiar, but they're the chemical cousins of the drug. They're not fentanyl, but they're sort of related to fentanyl, or they have a methyl group taken off or added on, and it changes the molecule. So there's an almost unlimited number of those, almost an infinite number. They think it may be as many as 3 billion possible combinations of fentanyl. And each one that he was able to produce was brand new to the world. He liked that. That was kind of his motivation, I think, more than anything.
Yeah. It sounds like that's probably why he dropped out of school. He just wasn't getting challenged enough. He's like, screw this. I'm going to go do something that's going to, rattle my brain and get me thinking or something. Because, I mean, with his genius level, I mean, for him to just whip stuff up like that, that's not just a normal chemist. next level chemistry right there. And because I look at a periodic table and it looks like a keyboard to me.
Me too.
I don't know what I'm looking at. So when it comes to his empire, so he starts this and how is his business growing? Is it just all of a sudden just boom overnight? He's the king of the drug world and of fentanyl, or was it a slow burn for him to get in there and really start pushing this drug out there?
Well, he was in a conspiracy with two other people, Joe Mardier in Pittsburgh, and the guy who financed the operation was the guy named Christopher Muscatello. He was in Boston, and Muscatello had connections with the Boston Irish mob, Joseph Murray, Michael Murray, Whitey Bulger.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That was where the money was coming from, was up in Boston, and that's who was distributing it. Squeak was really careful he never sold anything in Kansas. He didn't have anything. There was no fentanyl overdoses or any sign that anything was going on in Kansas. He wanted it as far away as possible. So when it first came out, they finally got it onto the street, was in February of 1991 in New York City. They distributed it there. First weekend, it killed 13 people. So it was a huge deal, huge, big. It was the first time fentanyl had hit the street in America in any quantity. And for 2 years after that, DEA was trying to figure out, where is this guy that's making it? Where is this lab? And it took 2 years for him to find it, which is the story in the book. It gets to the point where the investigation is ongoing and they're trying to get to the bottom of it.
So how long before, did they have to do like a lot of surveillance and, so that way they can kind of see where his web touched and scoped out? So that way, you're not just getting one little piece of the pie, you're trying to take down the whole kind of network, I guess you would say, for the fentanyl.
Yeah, they suspected that there was only one manufacturer of the fentanyl. So they were pretty sure. It's like Walter White and his blue meth. From a narcotic agent's perspective, like I was, that's a pretty good thing, because if you're always buying the blue meth, you're on the right ladder. You just haven't got to the top of it yet. So
gotcha.
In the case of this fentanyl, they were pretty sure, DEA was pretty sure from the beginning that it was one lab, one chemist, and when they got him, it was going to be over. So, but the problem was that they couldn't get to that from the street, which is the way narcotics investigations usually start. Is you start with the lowest level dealer that you can get to, and you try to bust him and maybe flip him and move up the ladder from there and go up. And that just wasn't working. And they thought that the lab was in Boston, and they actually had early on, even before the fentanyl hit the street, in these lab cases, what they do is DEA monitors the sale of precursor chemicals. In this case, they got information that this company in Boston was purchasing precursor chemicals, and it looked like a fentanyl operation, a fentanyl lab. So they put surveillance on that, and they followed this guy, turned out to be Muscatello, and he bought a 50-gallon drum of benzene, which is a very useful chemical in manufacturing illegal drugs. And he put it in the back of his Range Rover and drove off into the cranberry bogs in Massachusetts. So they were pretty sure that the lab was somewhere in Massachusetts, and it was at the time. But Muscatello burned the surveillance and disappeared with the barrel of benzene. So DEA closed out the case, and for a year or so, they didn't have any more leads to the fentanyl operation. But they knew actually that, when he turned up back again, they knew they were on the right track all along. It was Muscatello and Mardier, and They just didn't get him before it all started up.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so we do have to take a quick break. But eventually, George Squeak Marquardt gets caught. And there's a Minnesota tie to that, which is kind of cool. I mean, not in a cool way, but it just that I'm in Minnesota. And to know that something just 30 minutes south of me, it ties in with the story. But yeah, it has to do with Faribault, Minnesota. So we'll talk with our guest, John Madinger, the author of Lethal Doses, the behind-the-scenes stories of the Godfather of Fentanyl. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Did you know that radio just got a little extraterrestrial? That's right, Dave Schrader is back on radio with the Paranormal 360 every Sunday evening, 7 to 9 p.m. Central on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station. Just download the Odyssey app and look for the WCCO logo, follow the station, and listen live. That's the Paranormal 360 on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station. Hey, you, come here. Winnie Schrader here from Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot podcast, and I got a little secret to share with you. Are you an author, podcaster, comedian, or an online seller that needs a little help in the digital creation department? Well, I'm your hired gun. From graphics, book covers, press kits, radio tours, merch designs, audio editing, podcasting, and producing. Sure, you can do it all yourself, but all those design tools and stuff to make your promotion pop adds up. CapCut Pro, $8 a month. Canva Pro, $15 a month. ChatGPT 4, $10 a month. Midjourney, $10 a month. Adobe Audition, $23 a month. Plus, you have to do all the editing and all the tedious stuff that comes along with being a digital creator, author, or comedian to help promote yourself. That's where I come in at a lower cost than similar competitors because I know the anxiety and stress that it takes to make your mark in the world on a mac and cheese budget. You'll get one-on-one collaboration with me because this baby belongs to you, and I want to make sure what I'm doing is what you want and how you want it. For more information, visit wsmedia.press. The links are in today's description. Let me do all the legwork for you. That way you can focus on your passion. Again, the website is wsmedia.press, and let's just make some magic together.
Okay, and we're back. We have our guest, John Madinger, the author of Lethal Doses, the behind-the-scenes story of the Godfather of Fentanyl. I will have a link in today's description, so please check it out. And if you purchase the book, please rate and review. It really helps these authors get their books seen to like-minded people like you who love true crime. Okay, so before the break, he has like the ending to his saga of fentanyl. Kind of has a Minnesota in Faribault, Minnesota tied to it. So what happened in Faribault that changed the course of everything?
Well, actually, it was before fentanyl for him. He was on his way back. This was in late 1977.
Okay.
He was on his way back from the Northwest, where he'd been making methamphetamine and sending it back to Oklahoma. And he traveled along that northern highway 90 or whatever it is to he got to Minnesota and Minneapolis, and he went south to Faribault. And he stopped in Faribault because it looked like it was a quiet. He liked small towns to set up his meth operations in. And he actually liked, there's a Faribault. And he set up in the basement of a feed store in Albert Lee, and he had a problem with his somebody else that was renting the space had been renting the same space, and he thought that the guy was coming into, so they bailed out of that location and moved up to Faribault. And he wrecked his truck and rolled his truck in a ditch and was pretty badly injured. And the police that got him out of the wreck saw that he was first he smelled like chemicals all over it, and they found chemical paraphernalia and stuff in the truck. So they went over and they put him in the hospital in Faribault, and they went over to the motel where he was staying, and his partner and his kind of girlfriend were there in the apartment, and the police did it was an illegal search basically, and they found some stuff, but they weren't able to do anything with it because of the fruit of the poisonous tree. Couldn't use it in court.
Yeah.
And so they had to let them all go. They found all of the lab stuff. They found all of there was a major methamphetamine lab, and they found all of it, but none of it was, admissible in court, so they couldn't use it. And they left them to go out of. They actually ran them out of town.
Oh wow!
The story I like most about that, though, and I put this in the book, is that the guy that he had the dispute with down in Albert Lea was a duck hunter, and was heavily into making duck decoys. Kind of.
Oh yeah, it's a Minnesota thing.
Yes, that's a Minnesota thing. And so before he left Albert Lea, he just cut off the heads and turned them on backwards and did different things to them. Kind of juvenile, but the one thing he did say was that he drilled out the bottom of a couple of the ducks and put metal sodium in. Reacts like violently with water.
Oh,
violently with water. So, which I guess is a duck's natural habitat, is a decoy duck's natural habitat.
Yeah, right, in the water.
So I just he didn't stick around long enough to hear what happened, but I sort of got this picture of duck season being particularly exciting that year for this particular guy.
Duck decoys just blowing up everywhere.
It might have gotten higher than the actual ducks. You never know, right?
Well, hey, there's not much to do in southern Minnesota other than going there.
Way to Lewisburg and to the contacts that would be the fentanyl connection in the future. So Faribault's like a key part of if they hadn't done the illegal search and they'd locked him up in Minnesota and he had done his time in Minnesota, he may never have met the people that wanted.
Wow.
Met the people that wanted him to make fentanyl. It would never happen. So that one illegal search really had a lot of impact, I think, on American history.
Well, yeah, we could definitely, that's a thing we should talk about is the fentanyl crisis and what it's become today from where it started. And it's crazy because you're constantly hearing about these overdoses. And you were hearing it about heroin, then it went to Oxycontin, and painkillers, then it's back to heroin. But now fentanyl has been getting introduced over, I would say the first time I really started hearing about fentanyl being on the streets was when Prince died, honestly. I've heard of fentanyl and I've actually had fentanyl, but I thought fentanyl was only given in a hospital setting, like morphine. So I was like, how did he have fentanyl? And then I found out they have fentanyl lollipops. They have fentanyl fentanyl patches. I'm just like, what is happening? And then, it's so maddening because I find it so frustrating that I feel like these painkillers and these opioids and stuff, they need to be monitored by a professional. I mean, it's just like Michael Jackson with the propofol. You don't take propofol in your home. You do it at a hospital. And that's where I think pain management should be. And it's not because, people are just drug addicts. I mean, pretty much, like I said, 85% of people that come out of surgery will end up getting addicted to painkillers if that's what they're prescribed post-surgery. Not that they don't need it, but that's how addictive those are. Now, I had surgery about 2 months ago. I had encephalitis with staph infection, and I had to have surgery at my foot. Now I don't tolerate pain medication very well. I get like dope sick easily. But just that week I was in the hospital, they were giving me 10 milligrams of Oxycontin. By the time I left that hospital, 10 milligrams was not enough to curb the pain anymore. Just after a week of taking 10 milligrams. And I can't, and I can't imagine that medication mixed with a fentanyl, because I've taken fentanyl and that stuff is powerful. And I don't even understand how it's being prescribed outside of a hospital. So what have you kind of seen with the opioid? Because obviously you're more on, have your finger on the pulse of that, being a former, drug, working for the DEA and things like that. So what are you still kind of seeing out there, and what can we do as a society to try and stop it?
Yeah, really, that's the $64 question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fentanyl was originally approved for use as an anesthetic to knock you out for surgery. That was
Mm-hmm.
and that's how you want to use fentanyl. You want to use it with an anesthesiologist standing next to your head. That's where it's the safest.
Mm-hmm.
There's a safe dose, or there's an effective dose, and there's a lethal dose. That's what pharmacologists look at, is what is it going to take to get the effect that you want, and what is the amount that is going to kill you. And the difference between those two things is called safety margin. The lethal, they don't even really know the lethal dose of fentanyl. That hasn't really been firmly established. They think it's about 2 milligrams, which is, 2/1000ths of a gram. So that's like maybe several grains of salt. It's
Are you serious?
Not a lot. No, very, very little.
Oh.
The effective dose is somewhat less than that. They're not, they don't prescribe it. They administer it in the effective dose, the dose that they think is going to be effective for that patient. But that was the original approval for fentanyl, was for anesthesia and surgery. In the 90s, later 90s, early 2000s, FDA approved it for pain management, and they approved it in those things that you're talking about, the patch and the Actique lollipop form, which doles it out sort of slowly, right? I mean, that's the whole point of it. You don't get it all at once. And what's happening with the street fentanyl, or the stuff that's coming out now in pill form, or you're getting it from, you're getting it in the form of an injection off the street, a powder off the street, is that you're banging it all up at once. And that's what killed all those people the first weekend in 91, was they thought they were getting a bag of heroin. And usually that was about 40 to 50, maybe a little more, milligrams of heroin. And what they were actually getting was a bag of 40 milligrams of powder, which contained 4 milligrams of fentanyl. Well, 4 milligrams of fentanyl is double the
lethal dose.
So that's why you had people going to the hospital, and Narcan, was out there saving people's lives before they could expire, but it wasn't fast enough for 13 people. So, that's where the street stuff is most dangerous, is because people are taking it all at once. And the other thing that's a factor, and that's the game changer about fentanyl, is that you get a lot of people today that aren't seeking fentanyl. They aren't seeking heroin. They're not seeking to get high. Maybe they just want what you were talking about, a pill that's going to make the pain go away. And so they'll take these counterfeit pills. They're advertised as oxycodone or OxyContin, Vicodin, sometimes even tranquilizer drugs, and they don't know that there's a lethal dose of fentanyl in there, and it kills them. And so
Right.
you're getting these are accidental poisonings of people that aren't drug addicts, drug seekers. So, or fentanyl seekers anyway. And, that's the real difference between this drug and all of the other ones that have come before. It's very, very lethal in small
Mhm.
amounts. And it's going to people that aren't your typical, heroin junkie on the street kind of person.
Mhm. Well,
So
I mean,
I think that's what makes it so different in terms of the drug of abuse that we're looking at today, and all the other ones that we've faced before. It's a real problem, and I don't know how that problem can be solved.
right. And well, one thing I've heard people talk about it is that a lot of people have been buying their prescriptions like out of Mexico because it's cheap. If especially if they have a pain pill, well, they may not know they have a pain pill addiction. They think they're just treating their pain multiple times a day. But they don't realize the withdrawal pain. That's what they're experiencing. That's the pain. So then they take a pill to get rid of the withdrawal
Yeah.
pain, but they don't know it's withdrawal pain. But yeah, it's so baffling to me that this is not regulated the way it needs to be because you know people like having to go and buy drugs in Mexico because they're cheaper. They can access them. You don't know what's in them, or they're ordering them from overseas. And they're labeled, like you said, as oxycodone, Vicodin, whatever. And they're like, yeah, I got a couple bottles of Vicodin for like $10. And it's like, you don't take that unless it says FDA on it. Don't
Yeah,
take it.
yeah,
you know?
that is another key factor here is that when Marquardt was doing it, he had the only
Uh-huh.
lab in America. He had the entire market was coming out of Wichita, Kansas.
Uh-huh.
Today, the market is overseas. There aren't any more fentanyl labs in the United States. Or if there are, very few. The chemicals to manufacture it come from overseas, in China mostly, China and India. They go to Mexico, where they're
Mhm.
converted into fentanyl. They make lab in somewhere in Mexico. The
Mhm.
cartels, and they can make it in whatever form they want to use to bring it into the United States, pill form, powder form, liquid. They can do however they want to, and then it's smuggled across the border. So how do you stop that? I just don't have any. I don't have any answers for that. I don't know how it could be done. This stuff is
Right.
so lethal, and
I yeah, it's one of those vicious cycles because you try and figure out a way for them to block them from, getting, trafficking drugs over the border, but then they just figure out another way to do it. And it's just like this cat and mouse game for eons. It's been since
yeah,
drugs have been an issue. And with the talk of certain, like marijuana becoming legal, recreational, I've also heard pushback and say, well, why don't we make some other ones, legal? Would making stuff legal kind of bring the power down to where there's, not a low supply, high demand? And I'm not saying like get fentanyl like on the streets, but like, is there a way to uh, I'm trying to think of how to do it because a lot of people say that there's more money in having them illegal than it would be legal.
well,
If that makes
you're
sense.
going to make a trade off. That's what's going to happen. If you
Okay.
let's say that we, in order to kill the fentanyl problem, to stop the fentanyl from coming in and being distributed, people getting it on the street like they are now, that we offer people another narcotic, heroin or morphine. Heroin would probably
Mhm.
be the more preferable one for people, and we
Mhm.
offer that on a medical basis. We offer that, not like the medical marijuana thing that we've got now, which is kind of really
Mhm.
bogus. But it's going to be a doctor who prescribes it. It's going to come from a pharmacy. You have reliability, purity. You know that the stuff is not going to kill you. You're going to get a lot more addiction. That's what's going to happen. Is there's going to be more people use it. There's going to be more addiction, but you're going to get less deaths. I mean, that's the trade-off that you're going to get and that's historically that's happened in the past. When we've gone from a black market to a legal market, illicit market, then you get that trade-off. You get more of the consumption, but you may get less deaths. We probably would get less deaths than fentanyl. I mean, fentanyl is killing 200 people every day. I mean, the time we've been talking, there have been 2 or 3 people died just in the last few minutes. So, I mean, I don't know how much longer we can stand that. That's the equivalent of a city of 70,000, 75,000 people dying every year. And I don't know how long I don't know how long we can sustain that.
Right.
Society.
Well, yeah, and it's not that I'm not trying to put down addicts or anything like that, but just having this constant need to for rehabs, healthcare costs, all this stuff that is associated just with this medication alone, all the garbage that has to come with it. I mean, I almost feel like the pharmaceutical companies are coming at this at the wrong angle. Instead of just trying to create more and more pain meds, why don't you start creating drugs that can combat the withdrawal from these pain meds and have these people put on a program like methadone? They use methadone to combat the Oxycontin withdrawal. And that was actually really successful. Not for everyone, but it was something. So why aren't they coming out with something for I don't even know if there is anything that could combat fentanyl or give any type of same feeling as fentanyl, but
there's several drugs that they're using for treatment alternatives, and maintenance. Morphine is one of them, and methadone. But those things are essentially just replacing an addiction. And methadone, that's exactly what methadone does. It replaces one addiction with another. It's just its effects are different, so that you don't have to take as much of it as often. So that is an alternative. Okay. But I think that you're still going to get recreational users that don't want that drug. They want fentanyl, or they want heroin, and that's the drug that they're going to seek. So, I mean, I've argued in the past, and this is strange coming from somebody that worked narcotics for years, legalizing heroin is an alternative. They should be considering it. It's not something that, that I personally like to see in my neighborhood, but, you get that trade-off. You're going to get more addiction, and people are going to be addicted, and that's going to be their drug of choice, but you'll get less death. I think you will get less death if that's the case.
Well, that just made an idea pop in my head. Why don't we have a pain pill pen pal group? And anybody who, if they go on a pain pill, anything like that, you have your pain pill buddy, kind of like your sponsor. So if you have a surgery coming up or anything where you're going to have to take strong narcotics, have one of those buddies with you that they can check in on you and say, hey, how's the pain medication working for you? Are you tapering off? Or do you feel like you need to increase? So that way you're kind of getting ahead of the cart before the cart is even moving. You know what I mean? You're just kind of we're at a standstill here. That way you kind of have accountability for yourself and having somebody help you. Because a lot of times, and I've seen it firsthand, a lot of times these people, they become addicted and they don't even realize it till it's bad. And, we're talking, they're getting drugs from Mexico because they've been doctor shopping here because they're in so much pain. And one thing you got to understand with addiction is that sometimes when your body goes through withdrawal, it's going to create that pain because they know that pain will go away once it gets that pill. So it's
Right.
almost like your body is causing the pain so it gets its fix. And I know it's very accidental a lot of times when people, all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, I didn't realize I took this many pills a day. And next thing you know, they're just jonesing and they're doing anything they can to get it. And this fentanyl is just, it's scary that stuff like this is coming out. And it seems like the stuff that comes out is more powerful and potent than its predecessor.
Well, fentanyl sure is. Fentanyl definitely is. And there's
Oh,
versions of fentanyl that are even more powerful than that. You've got 3-methylfentanyl, which is something that Squeak was making. He made quite a bit of it. It's 6,600 times more powerful than morphine. So, I mean, that stuff is 50 milligrams, 50 micrograms, I'm sorry, which is 50 millionths of a gram, which is the weight of your thumbprint. Okay, you put your thumbprint on
yeah.
the screen, which you can't even see. That's a lethal dose. That's a lethal dose of 3-methylfentanyl. How do you keep that somebody from overdosing on that? There's no way. And he said that. He told his associates that. I don't know what you're going to do with this stuff, but you can't cut it. It's not safe. It's going to kill people.
Wow, that's terrifying. Oh my gosh. And I didn't even that.
No,
And
and
this is why I like having
there's
people like you on my show.
remember I said there were like a billion or 2 billion, 3 billion possible fentanyl analogs. Carfentanil is 10,000 times more powerful than morphine. There's another one that's estimated to be 1,000,000 times more powerful than morphine. I mean, be invisible. So, there's and none of those are hard to make either. If you've got that chemical talent, and the ability, and the precursor chemical supplies.
Yeah, people just don't do drugs. I'm just telling you this right now because you don't know what you're getting. I mean,
the old days when it was coke and LSD and heroin.
No, you look at people that did LSD and they look like they're the Beaver family, Beaver Cleaver, the Cleavers or whatever. But oh my gosh, that's crazy to know that they can make that powerful of a fentanyl that the weight of your thumbprint is a fatal dose.
Yep.
That is scary and terrifying.
That's very scary.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's why I love having people like you on this show because it's showcasing. And this isn't just like stuff in the past. This is happening right now.
Yeah.
And especially if you have kids in high school and they go off to college and everything sounds so fun and they're passing drugs around, you don't know if what your child's getting. They may not even know what they're getting. And it's scary to know that stuff is out there. And you can only do so much as a parent. I know as a parent of 11 children, I did not birth 11. We're a blended family, but like it's terrifying when you hear this as a parent because what can you do? So some people say they've been trying to find a way, and I don't know if they have, but to soak marijuana in like a fentanyl liquid or something, and then they're smoking these fentanyl lace joints.
Yeah,
I'm like, no, you don't need to do that. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, John, for coming on today. Do you have a website where people can go and check out other books that you have written and a link to get this book as well?
Sure. I have a website, johnmadinger.com, or you can go to godfatheroffentanyl.com.
Oh, perfect. I'll put a link for both of those in today's description, along with a link to your book. And please, people, please rate and review. It's very important. It really helps these authors. And it just kind of shows the appreciation as a reader to an author. Say, hey, good job. A+ for you. So it's kind of a good pat on the back for the authors because it's not easy writing a book. I've been writing a book for the last 5 years and I can't get anywhere with it. So, well, thank you so much. And also, people, I'm going to have some resources in today's description. If you or anyone you know is having a drug issue, abuse, anything like that, I will put some resources so that way you can seek help. You guys got to seek help. You're not going to get over it on your own. It's not an easy thing to detox and go through, trying to live a sober life. And so the resources are there, but you gotta reach out to them. And John, you said that you have a lot of resources at your website as well.
I do. Yeah, I have links to places where you can get information on fentanyl, grief counseling, and substance abuse treatment options.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing too. It's not just the addict that gets affected. It's it's their family, their friends. It's not just one person being affected. It's an entire family. And when you have somebody withering away from drug abuse right in front of you and you can't do anything about it, it's horrible and it's terrifying. So like I said, I urge you, even if you don't think you are a drug addict or you're addicted to pain medication or any type of drug, just seek help. Check it out. Look at, say, oh, what are some of the addiction symptoms? Say, you want to know what? I fit that. Oh, maybe I should go talk to somebody. That's all you got to do. And that way we can kind of crush all this problem of stuff coming from across the border and overseas, coming into our country and killing us as a society. So it's got to stop. Thank you so much, John. Again, the website is johnmadinger.com. I'll have a link for that in today's description, and I'll see you all next week.
Before we go, if you or anyone that you know in your family or friends that is struggling with addiction, there is help, but you got to make the call. All you have to do is call 988, or you can text to 988. They have online chat at their official website. So please, if you are impacted by drug abuse or any type of substance abuse, please reach out and get help today. And then you have the prestigious Hazelden and Betty Ford Clinic who can help you with your addiction, but all you got to do is reach out. You can give them a call at 855-836-4072 or visit their website at www.hazeldenbettyford.org. They even have an online rehab program that you can take at your convenience. There is help out there. You just have to reach out and ask for it. And all the information will be in today's program guide, so that way you have quick access to these resources.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you right here next week on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.